In late fall of 2004, two kittens enter our lives. They came with a funny story. When they were adopted, we were told that they were brought in a shoebox, maybe about 4 or 5 weeks old. We met them shortly after that and adopted them in early December. They fell into place really quickly with their daily rituals. They were often found running up and down the apartment hallways with their kitten energy. At times, I don't think Dexter knew he was a cat. If he had a love language, it was definitely napping. He'd want a nap, not just alone, but with other people. He'd wait outside the bedroom, he'd sit on top of the bed waiting for you, or when he figured it was nap time, he'd come look for you. He'd fall asleep next to me, and odd times I'd wake up with him still there, or maybe he left and came back. Before I would turn the light out, he would start getting frisky. He'd lick my hair, he'd lick my nose, he would do anything probably to show his affection for me. It annoyed me at times, and looking back, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was ticklish. And he'd repeat the same thing in the morning again. Why are you so adorable?
Oh.
When I wake up, I'd roll over and oftentimes I'd see him. Maybe he was still sleeping, or maybe he was up and he was just looking at me. His usual waking time was around 4 or 5 a.m. And at that time, he tried getting my attention. He was reminding me that it was coffee time. He loved people, and he definitely had his favorites outside of the two that he lived with. One of his favorites was Greg Hamlin. Whenever he came by, he'd follow him around the house. He just wanted to know who he was and what he was doing. It made more curious to him is, why are you so tall? And he didn't just like tall people and adults, he liked little ones. His two favorite little ones were Adelaide and Cyrus when they would come visit. Sometimes they would take care of him, and sometimes they would just visit. And he was as curious about them as they were as curious about him. He liked to travel and enjoyed visiting new places, such as visiting Michelle's house. With every visit, he explored every room of the first floor, and the second floor, and the basement. It's as if he'd never been there before. Or maybe he knew that he'd been there before and he just wanted to make sure that things were the same and that they were safe. He supervised Michelle in the kitchen or wherever she was working at her desk. He'd sit alongside of her, or he'd just stand up and watch her in the kitchen. But his favorite spot at her house was her spare bedroom. He would sit on top of the bed, he'd go under the bed. He just enjoyed hanging out there. After a while, it just became to be known as Dexter's room. But as you'd expect from any cat, he was pretty independent. He liked slipping under the bed when he needed me time. He liked sleeping in little spaces, like a storage box, or if I got new shoes, well, he was a 10-pound cat sleeping in a 5-pound box. He liked sleeping in dark closets, or in the basement, or under blankets. Well, under blankets, he really liked to borrow under blankets. Him and his sister both had that, and oftentimes she'd identify the best place to burrow, and he would follow her. A couple years ago, Maria asked me if Dexter had a startup sound, and this was new to me. I had not heard of such a thing. What is a cat's startup sound? So, one of those times where he was napping, I walked up to him. Unlike me, when he wakes me up, and maybe I'm like, why'd you wake me up? I was still sleeping. He was always excited. He was just happy that I woke him up, and he just wanted to do something with me. Anything. Lick my nose, follow me. Maybe there's treats involved. But he wasn't a cat that preferred isolation. I was his guy, and at times he seemed only content when we were within eyesight of each other. If I left the back door to go outside, maybe in the garden or maybe in the garage, he'd often be found waiting at the door for me. If I was in a room, maybe he'd be sitting on the couch next to me. If I was watching TV, he'd be sitting behind me. At Michelle's house, he had a favorite couch and he had a favorite blanket, and that favorite blanket had to be on that couch. That was his spot. When I take a break from work, especially during COVID, I go look for him. My break was finding him and rubbing his head, just getting his attention. In those mornings when I'd wake up, and if you weren't there, I wondered where you were. Why weren't you on the bed? Did you sleep someplace else? Are you sitting under the chair next to your water dish? Are you under the ottoman next to the fireplace? Are you sitting on top of the steps? Are you sitting someplace else in the house because maybe you got tired of me? Or maybe you just wanted someplace new? He had his rituals of sorts when it came to eating. He was a healthy eater until he got older, and then it was a chore to get him to eat because he got kind of picky. Did he want chicken this week? Did he want fish? You never ate beef, but all of a sudden you were interested in beef. How'd that happen? You're eating vegetables? What's wrong with you? He'd always do the long, indirect walk to his food bowl. If his dish was in the corner, he'd have to walk behind it, or at least just do a little walk around the room before parking himself behind the dish and eating. His very best favorite treat was cream cheese and butter. Where he was in the house, if he heard the sound of toasted bread or bagel, if he heard me pulling things out of the toaster, he came running in with the hopes that I'd share my butter or cream cheese with him. Like any cat, he loved fish. I used to share a can of tuna fish with him. I would make rice. I would open up the can of tuna. I would give him the broth and a little bit of meat, and he would inhale it. And I had cheap poke. And then when I did get poke, well, he got some of the tuna and salmon. When he would eat, I'd hear his dish go across the floor as he tried to get every bit of last food out of the dish. Sometimes I'd bring him more after seeing him struggle, or maybe I wouldn't want to see him struggle and I would just refill his dish. I spent a lot of time home during COVID, and a lot of times I would just go into the kitchen looking for snacks and he'd follow me. He's like, hey, buddy, if you're getting a snack, I'm getting a snack too. He liked cream cheese, and on his last day with me, I gave him a lot of cream cheese. I really wasn't worried about if it was going to be too fattening. He was tidy and well put together, which wasn't surprising because, well, he was a well put together tuxedo cat. He walked into a room with purpose and he was never in a rush. He spent hours grooming himself, often under the warm rays of sun coming in through a window. He had a huge appreciation for a new litter box. After I put a new one down and filled it up, he immediately started to use it. Gotta have Chris in this one. But he was also picky about the litter box. Man, he was a press. He'd have a protest pee if he'd gone 2 peas and I had not cleaned it up. He was slightly curious, as you'd expect, and sometimes the curiosity got him in trouble. He loved to walk across a freshly mopped floor while it was still wet, or want to explore what was behind a door that I left open. Earlier this year, I was gifted a cat backpack and extended the time that me and him spent together. I waited until those first warm days. We went out for our first walks. He was so chill when I scooped him up and put him inside. He didn't fight. He immediately would sit inside and watch the world around him as we walked through the neighborhood. Our longest walk was 5 miles, and he met many new friends that day.
What's going on here? Hi. Stretch.
A couple times a week, I put him in the back. We'd do an early morning walk around town, about 3 miles. On the way back, we'd stop at Roots Coffee. They didn't really like animals in there, but they knew him. I get my coffee and sit outside. During those morning walks, sometimes when they were chill, I figured he needed a little extra warmth, so I built a little makeshift heating blanket for him, powered by drone batteries. Go figure. One of the last times that we went into a coffee shop, they thought he was adorable and asked if he wanted some cream. They put a little saucer and put some cream. He inhaled it. Two of the hardest things I had to endure were saying goodbye to these two friends. First to Madeline in January of 2022, and to Dexter in July of 2023. You don't expect an animal to have a personality or to leave you with memories that are really hard to forget. And both of them did that. We're really lucky to have them, and they're going to be missed.